Okay, it is 9:01. And we've got the stream going. Alright. We are going to start this morning, as usual, with opportunities for public comment. If there are any guests in the room who wish to speak at this time, you are now welcome to do so, and please tell us your name and where you're from, for the record, if you will. No one.
I'm back here.
Ms. Harless.
Good morning, everyone. A couple things were left over on the agenda from before that I hope that the LNC is going to consider addressing. One would be adopting the policy manual position on the secret email list. The second thing would be convention contingencies. A lot of members are still asking about that, though the convention committee may have already done that. And if so, I'd love to speak with them afterwards. But also, this isn't an official statement because I wasn't given official directions from the Libertarian Party of Colorado, but I can let you know what the sentiment of the board is. We urge the LNC today to pass the deletion that Mr. Hagan proposed that I had brought up back in August of requiring affiliates to sign off on that agreement. I can tell you right now, without an official vote or official direction, that the LPCO will be withdrawn from the CRM project if that's not deleted. In fact, our response letter has already been typed up, and I didn't do it. Other people are super upset about that. I have been the only voice on the LPCO keeping us in the CRM. But if that isn't passed, I will have to withdraw my support. And I've been the one, our meetings are open and on YouTube, and you can see how viciously I've argued to keep us on the CRM. But if we're being forced to sign some kind of policy that we find repugnant to our autonomy, we will just pull out. So I urge you guys, we're not the only state that's thinking this. Please delete that. That's not the business of the LNC.
Anyone else from the gallery wishing to speak this morning? All right. Oh, we still have people coming in. Is there anyone else wishing to speak this morning from the gallery? All right. Hearing no more requests for public comment, we will move on to roll call. Mr. Hagan.
Ms. Billiou. Mr. Woolman.
I'm here.
Mr. Hagan is here. Dr. Epke.
Present.
Mr. Longstrand.
Present.
Mr. Bradson.
Here.
Ms. Harworth.
I'm here.
Mr. Smith.
Here.
Dr. Lucchini.
Here.
Mr. Nikela.
Present.
Mr. Nana.
Present.
Mr. Hewitt.
Here.
Ms. Hogarth.
Here.
Mr. Phillips.
Here.
Ms. Adams.
Here.
Mr. Bowen.
Here.
Mr. Flores. Mr. Sexton. Mr. Hall. Mr. Vieira.
Present.
Mr. Dancy.
Oh,
Oh.
Mr. Buffman.
Will not be here.
Mr. Wilford.
Here.
And Mr. Ford.
Here.
And staff, Mr. Harris. Mr. Krause. Ms. DeSisto.
Here.
Mr. Zell, anybody else?
Ms. McCutcheon is chairman of the running our live stream, and then you get Ms. Schultz.
Where'd she go? Oh, there she is. She's behind Jimmy. Mr. Harris, the other staff members who need the call-in number, I assume have it, right?
Yes.
Thank you. Secretary reports, we do have quorum. On we go. To the adoption of the agenda. As I stated on the list, the agenda has to be proposed in a particular order, which I know may not be ideal for everyone all the time. And in this particular case, I'll go ahead and tell you about a conflict I'm aware of, which is with Mr. Hall. So for the council's report, that is not good time for him. He indicated he's not available till after 2 o'clock today. And I'm also aware that there was a request to move the election of the secretary up sooner in the meeting. If I may, my recommendation is to swap those two things, putting council's report tomorrow. So, Mr. Lucci,
Is it perfect for me to make that motion
you can, or if there's no objection to it, we can just go ahead and swap.
now? I'd like to propose that we swap the council's report with the election of the secretary.
Is there any objection to that?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
Swapping the council's report and, which happens today, with the election, or filling the vacancy of the LNC secretary, which is scheduled for tomorrow, swapping those. So the secretary thing would come right after staff reports this morning, just before lunch. No objection to that? What's that? Yes, you moved it?
Yes, I did.
Okay, Mr. Molman seconded it. Thank you. All right, and hearing no objection, it is done. Thank you.
Madam Chair, on information.
Yes, Mr. Gold.
Would it be in order to discuss possibly moving up the two most important issues that we're going to be discussing here today? The budget and the Delaware situation. You know, we have a lot of committee reports. I know those are the things we usually do first. I expect we're going to run out of time this weekend, and I would like to make a motion to move the budget discussion immediately after the secretary's election, and then the Delaware motion after the budget discussion, everything else after that. I would like to hear discussion.
As the person asking, I'd rather do it Sunday.
I'm sorry?
I'm not sure that, I wouldn't rather continue with Sunday for the Delaware.
Okay.
Our budget stuff, I think, will take at least the rest of the day.
Hang on one second. I just want to clarify what you're asking for. You're asking for two things to be moved forward.
Correct.
Potentially winding up on today's schedule. If they were to come after the council's report, they would then need to be after lunch, which would be bumping region reports down, obviously, to tomorrow. So I just want to clarify where they would wind up. Mr. Smith?
Yeah, I just like to note that a lot of Delaware libertarians are coming to this meeting, and they were planning on being here tomorrow.
Tomorrow? Okay, I wasn't aware of that. I would withdraw that portion of the motion, but I would like to move the budget discussion up immediately after the secretary's election.
All right, it has been moved to shift the budget discussion forward directly after the council's report, correct?
Correct.
Okay, which would be today. It has been seconded by Mr. Molman. Ms. Adams, did you want to speak to that?
I see a lot of wisdom in moving committee reports and region reports to tomorrow so that we can address business today. Many times we tend to lose quorum or have early flights. Most of those reports have been submitted in writing, so it's something that we have, but very rarely are there addendums to them. I agree with Mr. Long. I think we should attend to business first.
Mr. Longstreth?
I would echo, so I don't know if the motion quite accomplishes that, but I would want to formally see region reports and committee reports moved to tomorrow, officially as part of the agenda, and not try to squeeze it in today at all.
Instead of tomorrow, this is the last.
Last.
If there's an objection, Mr. Thrasher, who actually is delivering one of the committee reports, would like to speak on this.
Yes, so, put it bluntly, the ballot access committee would request if the budget is moved up in the agenda, that the ballot access committee report happen before the budget
Just for clarity's sake, since we've already moved Mr. Hall's report and swapped it with the secretary election, are we not, you said we're moving this up after Mr. Hall's report?
Actually, that was my mistake. I think you did say after the secretary, after the vacancy thing, didn't you?
What's that, the budget discussion after the secretary?
Okay, yeah, that was my mistake.
I just wanted that to be clear.
Yeah, I hadn't actually swapped them yet on my screen, so, but yes, thank you. Mr. Lucchini?
So as a general thing, I believe that there are significant issues in the staff reports this committee needs to be informed of before we can discuss the budget intelligently. Otherwise, we're going to end up hearing piecemeal from staff on these budget issues. So respectfully, I'd like to preserve this. I do think that the regional reports, I don't know how many of your regional reps agree with this. We've submitted our reports in writing. I don't know that we need to verbally regurgitate them again. I think wow,
that's why it says supplements to written reports on the agenda.
Anyway, I would say if we're going to do something, let's just agree to be extraordinarily brief in our regional reports and save some time there. But I really think we need to hear from staff before we go into the budget.
Mr. Moman?
May I suggest that either as part of the budget discussion itself, or perhaps as some sort of bifurcated report, that we get the information that we need, that the people giving the report believe is relevant to the budget discussion, before the budget discussion. But committee reports are twofold, right? Here's what we've done and here's what we need. We don't need the what we've done right now, we need the what we need right now. And so, whether that's part of the budget discussion, I don't know. I'm just throwing out an idea that when we get through the budget, we could also hear from those committees to say, we need X. But I also see the wisdom of getting the reports first and get the report of what's happened. So we have it in context of why they're asking for that money. So, I don't know.
How about we adopt this agenda at the same time as discussing it?
Yeah.
But I do think that there is going to be context within those reports that we need to know. So I don't really have a whole lot of objection about moving this around, but I think if we keep a lot of these reports, which are already in writing, including the officer reports, to a very brief summary, I think we can save enough time that we can actually hear from staff and committees, especially those that are. If your committee has no budgetary request, then we can read it.
Thank you. Time has expired on this item. Is it appropriate for me to say something here?
Depends what you're going to say.
Okay, so, well, you can tell me after then. The beginning of the budget discussion is going to need to be an executive session. And that's going to be very difficult without some of the staff report information. So there's that. The other option I would say is just moving region reports and freeing up some of that time in the afternoon to get budget in today, but still after everything else that we need to hear. We have a motion on the floor. Time has expired, so unless someone moves to extend time.
You extend by 5.
Yeah, I'll second.
Second.
Okay, there has been a motion to extend time and seconded. Any objection to extending for 5 minutes, I heard? No objection. We are extended for 5 minutes. Mr. Phillips?
I would move to amend Mr. Bowen's motion to just be moving region reports to the end of to the end of the agenda and not changing any of the other things.
Can I speak to that?
So we have an amendment, and just remember, guys, we have to project in here. We're very far apart. Correct. So we've had a motion to amend the amendment by simply moving region reports to the end of the agenda. I hear no second.
I'll second that.
Okay, so it has been seconded. Are there any objections to that instead of moving budget up to after the secretary election? Okay, so it is amended as such. So Mr. Lucchini, the motion now is, or Mr. Bowen?
Yep.
The motion now is to move region reports to the end, which in theory will free up time to bump budget up.
Without objection, I'll probably have another minute after that, though.
Mr. Smith?
Yeah, in the interest of time, I mean, we get the region reports sent to us through email. We've all had the opportunity to read them. We could just dispense with them entirely. I mean, that would be, if I could make a motion, if that'd be in order, I'd make a motion to just dispense with the region reports. We have a lot to do here between the Delaware thing and the budget meeting. We could just get rid of the region reports. We've read them, they're online, so I can make a motion.
I would second that.
So, Mr. Smith, are you moving to amend?
I am moving to amend to remove the regional reports. Yes.
Point of order. We're 2 amendments deep in this, we need to dispose of something.
It's already been amended, so we're actually at a, yeah, we're only at one amendment now. Yeah. But thank you though. Okay, so the motion on the floor is to amend the amendment of the agenda by removing region reports altogether for this weekend.
Second.
Has been seconded. Any objection to removing regional reports and saving time all around? Okay, it is done. Thank you. Regional reports are deleted from the agenda.
That was a motion to amend the Bowen minutes.
Correct.
Which still needs to pass.
That's true. Thank you. All right, so, yes.
Steal that time and put it onto the budget. Reallocate that time and put it on the budget.
So.
Second that.
But now,
Could you repeat that, please?
No, we're back to the main motion. We're back to the main amendment. Is it, we got it, yeah. We got passed without objection.
All right, so region reports have already been, well, it's proposed that region reports are being moved out. Mr. Moman is proposing that we reallocate that 50 minutes and adding it to the budget discussion.
Second.
Bringing that discussion to,
Point of order, I already seconded it.
what's that?
I already seconded it.
Seconded.
Ken's motion.
Oh, okay. That would bring the budget discussion to 230 minutes. That has been moved and seconded. Any objections to that? Okay. So we are also looking at which is just to remove it altogether and make it 230. All right, so we will now proceed to a vote on the amendment, which is actually it's to adopt this now.
I think we still have to do the amendment, which is now to remove committee reports and add that time to the budget.
Region reports.
Or that's, sorry, that's
Yeah,
what I'm at.
remove region.
Remove region reports and add that time to the budget. That's the final, now we're at that point, and then we can be back to the main.
Okay. All right, so with all the amendments that have happened just in terms of the budget and the region reports, we are now voting to remove the region reports completely and adding that 50 minutes to the proposed budget line, bringing it to 230 minutes, and in theory, starting that this afternoon. Are there any objections to that? Hearing no objections, it is done. So the agenda has been amended accordingly. Give me a second to update this, please. All right. Oh,
I was gonna move to adopt the agenda as amended.
okay. We have a motion to adopt the agenda as amended.
Second.
It's been seconded. Any objection to adopting this agenda? Hearing no objections, the agenda has been adopted. Thank you. We have an agenda. All right, the next item is reports of potential conflicts of interest. Mr. Hagan, anything you need to ask or clarify?
And I just want to note they sent out a list of conflict of interest, got several feedbacks. Back, the updating the list. Want to make sure there's no others need to be recorded.
No other conflict of interest to report, potential. All right, moving on. Officer reports. I did not submit one in writing. Just got away from me, and I had no internet last night. But I do have a few things I will mention, and then the remainder of my time can be for questions if there are any. Just kind of a rundown of what I've been doing since the last time we met, outside of the things that we've all done together. Had a successful call time with Tara the other day. That was super fun. How much did we raise, and did you get it yet?
We raised $8,000 in pledges from 3 different people. Yes.
That was I try
There's
to.
more calls to be made, I'm sorry. So please, take time.
Staff calls, I'm on those as much as I can be. It's just always really good to hear the things that staff is doing, and I'm honored to work with such fantastic people who just have this is very important work to them too, and I appreciate sharing all of this with them. So thank you, staff, by the way, for letting me be on those calls, and I will continue to do that as much as possible. I've been on some of the AO calls, not all of them, when I can, and EBCC, of course. Obviously, we've all had fun with the Judicial Committee. I did attend the Region 7 training as an attendee, and then Region 8, and I actually got to be one of the trainers, which was super fun. Thank you for that opportunity. I have been to the office a couple times, well, I guess once since our last meeting, and had the opportunity to spend the day with Tyler and a potential donor from South Carolina. That was very fun. As someone who actually had been a state senator for a while in South Carolina. Had an opportunity to talk to OP Florida about some of their lobbying and legislative efforts that they're looking at. So I appreciate them looking into that kind of thing. Election night shows. Oh, I attended the, Ms. DeSisto and I attended the Atlas Society Gala, where we were able to connect with some potential donors there and network with people. I know there you are, Mr. Ferreira also hopefully has continued that relationship. Candidate aftercare, which was really fun. My first time doing that. That was really fun. Had lots of good conversations with that on election, well, a couple days after election night. Done some writing for LP News, of course, and had a lot of interaction with Mr. Hall, mostly for Florida. Where's Florida? Thanks for that.
Yeah.
Hopefully you guys are getting it worked out.
He's the one shivering
And of course, continuing my work with APRC and the Convention Oversight Committee. So I'm not able to attend every convention committee anymore, but still doing what I can there and available as needed. So, are there any questions for me? All right, Mr. Molman.
All right. So since the last LNC meeting, I've been focused a lot on the CRM based upon what the action was taken at the previous meeting. New hardware was purchased, built, installed. It's up and running. We actually have, by the way, some great resources that's in Texas. And another shout out to some of your Texas libertarians who really help with that. We actually solved the very last remaining hiccup from the migration last night. In addition to increasing security significantly, it did enable us to find the primary issue with the performance on the CRM, and we're now working to get that resolved. So that's big news. That's been a complaint. The issue mostly affects county users, which is kind of a big deal because that's what we're trying to get to use it. So it also affects LNC members, as Mr. Lucchini is aware of. And so the upside is we now know what's causing the problem, and the core team that does the development work, that maintains the software, they are working on that anyway. They actually found it about a week before we did. So we did submit what we want and our thoughts on that. On the CRM, I've been doing a lot of work with Florida actually the last few weeks. Florida's getting all the love here apparently. but we're putting together all the multiple sources of data and just a re-emphasis that it is important to actually maintain clean data and make sure that you're using that data and keeping it relevant, because I'm about 80 hours into this mess and I've got probably 80 more to go. So going forward, related to the budget meeting, I mentioned this, the LNC in Gmail, whether we do something about that or not. And then the big one is whether or not Razor's Edge would be continued after 2022. I don't think it's reasonable to suggest that we would be able to phase it out at this point, because we're like a month away from renewing the bill. Unfortunately, they will not let us do month to month, because like every good service provider, they provide no glide path out of them. And so what I would like to do, and I've talked to this person on this, is to create someone, or to create a position, or to do something, and figure it out later exactly how, but Ryan Graham, the chair of Georgia, has volunteered to be the project manager slash project lead to do the analysis on where Razor's Edge would fall short on, or excuse me, where City would fall short, what Razor's Edge does today. Sorry, I haven't slept much the last couple of weeks. So Ryan Graham from Georgia would be willing to lead that, to provide the outside view of what it is that if we were to say, okay, we're going to get off of Razor's Edge by the end of 2022, what was it that City would need to have to make that successful? And so that's a recommendation. And then the final note is that I would encourage all of our members and volunteers to keep pushing forward. We made great progress in the last couple of election cycles. We're entering 2022. And we need to hold what we've gained and get more gains. So other than that, that's my report.
Thank you. Mr. Hagan?
Yeah, we sent out this was October end of the month, financial reports, and by the highlight is that our current reserve is at $155,000, and our target is $55,500, so we're almost triple our target reserve, so actually a pretty good position. So, any questions?
Thanks, Tim.
Oh, and guess one other thing, have you saw the Giving Tuesday email that went out this week? Last time I checked, it raised over $3,000 and 6 different categories. Is that correct, Mr. Harris? 6 different categories. One I saw was one was donated the most to was actually the general funds.
Right. I think the top line number all in on Giving Tuesday was that we raised over $20,000. So a fantastic day.
That's not earlier. Yes, third Tuesday afternoon. Right.
Happy birthday, Mr. Johnson.
That's it.
Right, and then, as secretary, do you have anything to report?
Have 3 minutes that need to be approved. So I'll move to approve the minutes for the June 27th meeting. These have all been sent out to the business lists.
I'd like to make a motion to amend those, if I can, if that's in order at this time. I love you, Tim, but can you strike Reverend from my name on everything? So,
Certainly.
All right, that's my only request on the meeting minutes. While I technically legally hold that title, I don't claim that title.
I think I ended up with it once or twice.
I know. For
All right,
future.
so what was the date of those minutes, the 27th?
June 27th is the first one.
So we have a motion to adopt the minutes, or approve the minutes from June 27. Mr. Moman has moved to amend those by removing Reverend from his name in any instance in those minutes. It has been seconded by Ms. Adams. Any objection to removing Reverend from Mr. Moman's name? Objection. All right.
Thank you.
to approve the September 4th and 5th meeting.
Hold on a second. I didn't hear anyone move these. Did you move the minutes?
Yes.
Okay. And someone seconded them. Any objection to adopting the June 27 minutes as amended? There are no objections. They are approved. Next.
I move to approve the minutes for the September 4th and 5th meeting with Mr. Mullins title that he prefers.
Any objections to approving the minutes from September 4-5? There are no objections. The minutes are approved.
Move to approve the minutes for the November 21st meeting. And again, with the, if I have it in there, I'm not sure if I did on that one, the title, Mr. Mullins prefers.
Second.
All right, the minutes from November 21st have been moved and seconded. Any objections to approving those minutes? All right, they are also approved. Congratulations. It was just 3?
Yeah.
Anything else?
No.
All right. That brings us to staff reports. Way ahead of schedule. Is that okay for your meeting?
Thank you so much, Robert. If you will dial in the polycom so you don't have to delay there when it gets to that section. The written staff reports did go to the business list. Mr. Hagan, I reported to you. I don't know if they're in the folder. They're in the folder now?
Just now put them in.
Beautiful. So they are now in the drive folder as well. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Welcome to Google Meet. Enter the meeting pin followed by the pound key. Thank you. You're joining a call with 2 other people.
All right. Let's not do that. All right. We don't need infinite Tylers delivering staff reports. Just one will do. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate that this meeting has a very, very tight agenda. And while I recognize that staff reports can tend to go long, especially depending on the committee's interest, to ask questions of staff, I will try to rely on our written reports, which are now both in the drive folder and have been sent to you all via the email list wherever possible in the interest of time. I did start those written reports and will start this report with what I think is an important caveat. For staff, we view Q4 reporting as an opportunity, especially going into a budget meeting for the LNC, to try to capture a sort of year-end review. But we're doing this early in December for this meeting, which means not only is virtually all of December ahead of us, but we've not had a chance financially to fully close out November end of month either. So a lot of what you will find in the written report talk about the year and the expected trends through the end of the year, because of course we have a lot of lessons that we can glean, and we know what much of the journey has looked like, and can try to project out where we expect the end of the year to be. So all that said, we are on pace for 2021 to be the best year in terms of revenue that the party has had in an off-cycle year in memory. At least going back 20 years, and likely further than that. I haven't been able to get anybody to pin down a specific time. It's possibly the best the party has ever had. And yes, thank you, Cal. So there are a litany of reasons you can imagine that contribute to that. And I will try to project for the back. If I don't, please let me know. And I can't possibly stand up here and highlight all of them. You'd run out of time for all of the other business. But I do want to point out 2, specifically because they involve staff directly and our strategic direction as a staff as we approach fundraising activities. The first is, and we've talked about this before in our staff reporting in prior meetings, but the renewed and increased focus on building out our monthly donorship. Our monthly recurring donors now comprise $50,000 a month of contributions coming into the party. That means if we adopt the most conservative outlook and assume that we stop growing that donor base, which we have no intention to do, but if it just holds flat at its current level, that means $600,000 of next year's activities will be funded just by our monthly pledge contributions. So that is paying dividends in a tremendous way for the ongoing financial stability and revenue growth that we're seeing in the party. Secondly, I want to call out again the efforts of Tara DeSisto and our development team in really honing the way that we ask for contributions from our donors. We have professionalized not only our staff operations and activities, but we have become very adept at focusing our fundraising requests on specific projects and programs, on connecting the very important dots between where the money you give to the party, whether you're a small donor or a mid-sized donor or a large donor, the contribution you give and the specific effect that that contribution has in enabling us to carry out the activities of the party. This party has a long history, and oftentimes the fundraising has either adopted a general tone of, aren't we great? You're a libertarian, we're a libertarian, how about sending us some money? Or a more dire tone of, things are tight, we need your help right now, right? But what we are starting to build out, what we're seeing really become a very effective strategy is saying, if you are able to help contribute to this effort, here is what that will go to do. We want to grow out our comms function by adding a tool that has this functionality that will cost us $12,000. Here's a thermometer towards that effort. Can you help us get there? You know, we want to put canvassers in the field to help elect our libertarian candidates who have a real shot in competitive races. Here's how much it costs for a canvasser to go out there per door and per day and per month. Will you help us sponsor those efforts? And that sort of connecting the dots is something that I think has transformed the way that we raise money as a party. And we've seen it in the budget lines where you look at what was budgeted this year as expected revenue that was just general revenue coming in the door and expected revenue specifically for projects and programs. And the big expansion of project program revenue, I think, speaks to that shift in focus, and is a large part of why it has been such a successful financial year. So moving away from the purely financial side of things, sorry, Tim, there are also a number of important benchmarks that I want to highlight, starting with the regional trainings that we conducted across all 8 regions. I want to specifically shout out Kara Schultz, who took the bull by the horns. Please clap for Kara. This was Kara's baby brainchild and passion. She piloted it in prior years, and this year we were able to roll it out to all 8 of our regions. The trainings were very well received by participants. We know this because we have tracked metrics. Every participant, yes, Steve Sheets has his training crew shirt, and I want to thank not just, Michelle was at, I believe, every one of the trainings. Michelle, Kara was a huge constant presence to keep consistency across them, but we also had a very large number of staff and volunteer trainers from throughout the party. So everybody here in the room and on the live stream who helped make those successful as a presenter, thank you so much. But I do want to talk a little, we know that these were well-received trainings because from the very first moment in the planning stages, Kara didn't just ask, what do we want to do, but also, how do we measure its success? How do we make sure that we're collecting the data we need for it to learn and grow? How do we have the ability to make it better the next time we do it? How do we have the ability to evaluate where we are as we go? and building in surveys for attendees, tracking attendee metrics, working with Andy Burns and our amazing CRM team to build out the CRM tools to track event attendance and attendees and the certifications, and we know how many of our attendees attended what days and achieved what certification and what level, and the ability to, and then how they responded and quantify their experience in terms of whether they recommend it to other people, how they felt about the experience, areas they thought they could improve. All of this stuff was Kara spearheading it, and so thank you, Kara, for making it a very successful program, and one that is going to leave a legacy for the party to grow. Of course, we did, you may have seen, have a bit of an election since the last time we came together and met. I'd be really remiss if I did not acknowledge the tidal wave of new Libertarian elected officials that LP Pennsylvania put forward. Congratulations to the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania. The Libertarian electeds were elected across several other states as well. Many of those races in Pennsylvania are notable for being unopposed candidates, but they also won opposed contests there. Many of those races were partisan races, which is an important distinction that we sometimes don't make, but it means that Libertarian was quite literally on the ballot, not just a Libertarian that can now affect policy in positive ways in those local offices, but the Libertarian Party name moving the needle on one of our most important things that we have in front of us as a challenge every time we run a candidate in a race, which is the perceived legitimacy of the Libertarian Party. And the more we acclimate voters to Libertarians being on their ballot, running and winning in a way that is visible, in a way that is visibly and obviously and identifiably Libertarian, that helps move that needle. Of course, any conversation about the legitimacy of the Libertarian Party and the advances that we've made in that direction would be very incomplete without mentioning the efforts of Apollo Pizzell and our Libertarian Frontier Project and our team in the Mountain West and specifically in Wyoming. We've seen this year. Absolutely. We have seen this year a legislative cycle in Wyoming where the word libertarian has been in everybody's mouths and on everybody's minds through virtually every major issue that they considered, and in an inordinate amount of press coverage there in those local markets. The big question on everybody's mind as Marshall Byrd entered the legislature was where are libertarians going to be on this important issue or this important vote? And so it became tremendously instructive in terms of what a libertarian is and where libertarian policy is. But I think, importantly to me, to also note, it meant that we had a seat at virtually every important table, and oftentimes we had the seat at the head of the table, as we were the key piece in moving something forward or in making something happen. I want to acknowledge not just Apollo Pizzell, who we already applauded. I want to acknowledge Christine Stanquist, Mario Prasuti, the rest of the team. I see Connor Boskuel in the back. Connor, working the project. The lobbying effort, the legislative support, the professionalism of the campaigns, what it does is it emphasizes that the Libertarian Party isn't a footnote or part of some political sideshow. It is an integral and important part of our political process in this country that legitimizes us in the region heavily, and as we replicate it across other regions, continues to legitimize us for all of our candidates as they seek office to help them tackle that important burden. Mr. Molman spoke already to some extent about our CRM project. I want to point out that under Andy Burns, we've had a year of a great amount of progress being made in onboarding. We've brought on a large number of states. We continue to be regulated at the pace at which states want to work with us. But the directive that I set forward as our objective at the beginning of the year is the place where I think we reside more or less now, which is that we are never the stumbling block. We are never the impediment. There's never a state going, gosh, I really wish that we could get our CRM onboarding started, but we've been waiting 2 months for national. We're now moving at the pace that states are willing to onboard, and I believe initial onboarding conversations have happened with every single state that has expressed interest, unless there's one that's very recent that I'm not aware of. We still continue to work to close the training gap on the CRM side, but the work of David Agan across the year has been tremendous in transforming that from where it was 12 months ago in terms of the level of training support that's available to our state CRM users and our chairs and IT directors as they engage with the product. Of course, one of the biggest challenges that staff is going to be facing very early in the next year is the planned departure of our communications director, Larissa Gahn. Larissa's done an incredible job this year, but she is going to be moving on in December 31st. She is working currently and intensively with Becca Congdon, a talented member of our development team, to train her up so that she can act as an interim communications director so that there is no disruption to that function upon the turn of the year. Becca is one of the unsung heroes on staff in that she oftentimes does not get a lot of forward-facing credit. You know her as our appeals manager. What you may not know is that she was a very key and integral part of a change in our social media messaging early in the year. That was very well received and widely heralded in all quarters of the party. She's been continually and consistently engaged, particularly on the Twitter side of our communications department. She's also an incredibly talented writer, which is where she has been such an asset in appeals. So she is a tremendously good fit, and I'm very confident in her capabilities to help bridge that functional gap until we are able to permanently stabilize things in that department later in the year. Another one of our challenges, I think perhaps our biggest challenge as a party, but certainly our biggest challenge as a staff, is growth, which is a good challenge to have. As the party brings in more revenue, attracts more members, becomes a larger institution with more elected officials, running more races in more places across the country, as we have more data to handle that we're analyzing and processing and prospecting from in more sophisticated ways, as everything expands, our watchword in our internal staff conversations for the past year has been scalability. How do we adopt processes and practices that can grow as our party grows? Because I think I can speak on behalf of staff, certainly collectively, if not every individual, I believe every individual member of staff, in saying that we believe in a large libertarian party future. We believe this party needs to be ready to step onto the stage that we know is waiting for us. And so as we have worked our way through last year's priorities and budget priorities and done our own internal strategic planning on how we're going to accomplish the goals that this body sets forward, we have talked constantly about are processes that we currently have scalable? And are the processes that we're planning and putting into place scalable, and can they grow? Manual, labor-intensive process flows and procedures are not sustainable in our future as staff. We cannot, if we double the size of the party, have the workload of staff double or triple or quadruple along with it. So we have already talked when we look at the plans that we put in place fresh, how do we structure things in ways that are scalable? Our challenge as we move into next year is to reevaluate all of the processes that we have and say, how do we take these things that we are doing and have done and make those scalable so that we're ready for the party to grow without having to, like I said, double or triple man hours to accommodate the workload or be crushed beneath it. I think we are in a good place to think strategically about that. As I said, it's the best kind of challenge to confront, but that makes it no less important that we confront it. Because doing it incorrectly will hamper the growth of the party. Failing to stick that landing will be an impediment to our ability to expand. And so obviously this body sets the resources, sets the priorities, sets the budget. This is what's so important about this meeting every year. It's not just about dollars and cents. It's about saying where are this organization's priorities as it moves into the next year. And we as staff will emerge from this meeting that answer in hand and have to answer our own question. How do we rise to meet those priorities? And how do we do it in a way that's going to facilitate what we've already started to see, which is the continued growth of the Libertarian Party across basically every apples-to-apples metric. That said, I'm going to turn over the rest of this reporting to our talented staff, beginning with Mr. Robert Kraus to deliver the. Do you want to do questions for me at this time, or do you want to do it with the?
I don't want to do questions, but I do. Typically, as we all know, I try to thank every staff member as they speak. I just wanted to, in the interest of time today, I just want to start with that all of you have done amazing work, and I couldn't be prouder of everything that you guys have done for us, and thank
you. Mr. Kraus.
Good morning. Welcome.
Morning.
How is everyone?
Great.
Awesome.
Cold.
Cold. I know the feeling.
Yeah, you do now.
Coming from Miami.
Yeah.
Telling you, this is not pleasant. Wasn't my choice. I would have invited you all to Miami for a November, December meeting if you all recall.
Like a motion, the LNC never meets in the north during the winter.
There's that to throw rocks at my wall.
But
I throw back.
But I love the warm welcome targets, everyone. And so I actually feel very warm being in Boston. I submitted a report. It's very brief. You're welcome to read it quickly. Just some highlights of the report. We're currently officially effective, at least with December 1st, if not November 30th, over $1.9 million for the year, making this our best year in off-election year in greater than 20 years. Same thing with membership, our best membership year in an off-election year in 20 years. So we're in a really good position. I know Tara's going to highlight all kinds of fancy numbers for y'all in just a little bit.
If you include convention revenue, we're over $2 million.
Well, yeah, but we can't because, as you know, that gets booked next year in May.
Just saying, it's there.
Because Miss Adams will hang me up by these chandeliers upside down. Toenails if I touch any of her money. So, we will not do that. It's all secured in our PNC restricted account. And I think there's over $60,000 there for the convention currently as of now. So that's excellent as of the end of November. So we're in a really good position for paying for the convention already. Aaron will hopefully have some figures for you later on in terms of actual package sales, which are looking pretty good considering, you know, how in advance we are 6 months before the convention. So I think we're in good shape there. In terms of the operations side, we do need in the budget, there's $15,000 for maintenance and repairs. We already completed the basement. We painted and refinished the handrails and did some other work in the basement, some of which related to the fire damage from several years ago. So we're a little slow, but that's okay. And now we need to do the next 2 floors because we've been there since 2014. And so it's been 7 years since we've repainted. It's needed. We've had some ceiling leaks and other things like that up on the top floor. So there's a little bit of money for roof repair, a little bit of money for our standard brick maintenance, and step maintenance and those kinds of things, but most of that $15,000 in the budget is going to go towards repainting and refinishing, and again, some standard roof repairs, so that we don't have some of the problems we previously had with leaks. Unfortunately, DC gets a share of terrible storms, and every time that happens, we end up with a little bit of problem. We do have a flat roof, so there's not much we can do about it, other than just staying on top of maintenance, which we have not been all that good with in the past. But starting about a year and a half ago, as we got, the mortgage paid off, we started spending some building fund money and other money, again, stepping up general maintenance, so we're constantly on top of it. So I think that helps. We have a long-term maintenance contract with our HVAC provider, and they're very good about maintaining our newish HVAC on the roof. So I think we've had less problems since then, and I hope to continue with less problems at HQ in terms of general maintenance. Aside from that, any questions? Yes.
So if someone did not want staff to be rained on, should they contribute to the building fund?
Absolutely, please. Please help with some of our expenses in the building, including just general maintenance expenses that we pay out of the building fund monthly. And those maintenance expenses are part of the general budget, also will be paid for out of the building fund. So feel free to contribute to that as well as our general fund. Yes?
Mr. Krause, first of all, as always, thank you for your bailing out of, speaking for a friend, of course, those who engaged in last minute planning for their trip here. As always, we've managed to create magic out of dust. But a serious question. Given the growing trend towards virtualization, and quite frankly, all the advantages that it brings us, because there are people right now displayed around the country that are doing all sorts of amazing work outside the country. At what point in time, the operating costs of this building versus any income it may bring in, at what point in time do we move to get away from being a property owner and all the attendant costs, take that money that was being realized based on the increase in value, and perhaps looking towards, based on federal laws, some type of endowment? Is it really time for us to start at least considering moving away from being a physical property owner?
I think we'll always need physical property. A lot of mailing is done out of HQ. All that would have to be subcontracted. There's an enormous expense to subcontract things that are cheaper to do ourselves. Usually if it's under 1,000 to mail, so our renewal letters, our new member letters, those types of things. It's extremely expensive to mail in small quantities, to print in small quantities. It's extremely cheap for us to do it at HQ. So it kind of makes sense to have a physical building. There's stuff in the building, there's people that meet in the building. We've used it for local candidates before, as you all recall. Several local candidates used our basement to work out of as their HQ. We've held training there and some local meetings there previously. There's certain files we have to keep. So again, you pay for more outside storage to keep all these files. The auditor, the fact likes paperwork. They like you to keep it for a number of years. So there's the physical need to have a space to keep stuff, right? So you have that. Secondly, building fund money can only be used for a building. So let's say we sold this building, we get $800,000 back. That goes back into the building fund. Then what do you do with it, right? It's limited what you can do with building fund money. So one of the advantages of owning a building is we as a party cannot take out just a loan, right? We can't go to the bank and say we need $100,000 because we have this emergency need or this emergency legal case or appellate access situation. You can take out a loan against assets, against your building. So that gives us that ability to quickly get cash if needed, if we're in a cash poor situation. luckily, we're asset rich when it comes to the building. It gives us an advantage where we can grab those funds via a loan and use those funds for a different purpose other than building. So there's some advantages to having a building. And keep in mind, our rent at the time in 2014 when we moved was over $12,000 for the same amount of space, where currently we're paying about $2,500 a month to maintain the building on average. So there's definitely a cost advantage. I know in the DC market, $2,500 will buy you approximately 2 10-foot offices or 200 square feet of rental space, which is not enough to do the kind of work we're currently doing at HQ, right? And certainly not enough work, space to store paperwork and that kind of stuff that we have to legally keep for the fact in case we're ever audited. So do you then rent another space for $500, $1,000, right? You need somebody to process that paperwork, file it, store it, etc. Now you're talking a third or fourth person in the office. So now you rent another 10 by 10 office at another $1,000 a month. The expenses keep adding up, right? I'm at $3,500 just talking about the types of space we would need to keep going the way we're going with the people in the office and what we do in the office. So it doesn't make sense. It makes perfect sense to have our building, have our HQ, use our HQ. I think a couple of the people we talked about hiring will work out of HQ. So it's not being used. It's just not being used as much as it used to be used. But we envisioned it when we bought it. Nick Sarwart was talking about, wouldn't it be nice if we actually had the need to expand our space at some point in the future? And again, the $800,000 plus that's invested in our space will give us that serious deposit on even a larger space in the future when the need arises.
Capital projects are a major fundraising opportunity for us, and I would not suggest downsizing our space. I would suggest expanding across the country to a West Coast office if we were gonna do anything with our property, because donors love capital projects.
Madam Chair, I have a point of something. Okay, we made a bunch of motions earlier this morning in order to kind of streamline this meeting. We're in staff reports right now. And I feel like we're kind of getting off track with staff reports, going down a rabbit hole. We're asking staff to justify their existence and the existence of our office, which I don't feel is the purpose of this. If that's a conversation we need to have. I feel like that's a conversation for the LNC at another time, not necessarily during staff reports. And I would ask if we could move on.
Point well taken. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Adams. In light of that, Mr. Lucchini, did you wish to be recognized, or? I'm going to assume that satisfies Mr. Lucchini's point as well. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. I do believe we are probably about a third, if not more, of the way through our time, so I'm going to ask staff to move with alacrity and consider letting some of your written reports stand as written. With that noted, Ms. DeSisto to speak to our development efforts.
Hey everybody, welcome to my home. I hope you guys brought your warm clothes. It's a really beautiful city. I hope that some of you have the opportunity to get outside of this room and see what Boston has. Harvard Square is very close. It's a very fun place to be. Thrift shops, record shops, lots to do here in Boston. So please take the opportunity. I will definitely take it personal if you leave here this weekend and have a bad time. That being said, you have all in front of you the 2020 annual report. This is last year, this is old news, but I want to make sure that you all have a copy. We are growing. We are growing in membership. We are growing in dollars. Things are happening. It's so wonderful that we are in a place where we can talk about growing our staff and growing our capital projects to include something beyond. Like, we are in a space where we can start thinking about the future of this party and not just chasing our tail, trying to plug a hole in the bucket. I'm so proud of our staff.
what we've done this year, what Kara Schultz did with the candidate training was phenomenal. People got really on board with that. That raised a lot of money. That's an opportunity. That kind of growth helps us show up for our membership in ways that we haven't been able to before. And people are willing to take out their wallets for that. I feel honored to be able to speak to so many different kinds of libertarians across this country all the time. You are all so different. None of you are like the other. I feel really honored to be able to engage with our most generous membership. And so thank you. My staff report was handed out to you guys in the folder, so I won't go through it too much. Mr. Hall had asked a question about lifetime members. I included the new lifetime memberships that had been in there. He asked last time. I do want to highlight some LNC members who have really gone above and beyond for development, and they are Chris Lucchini, who's not here, Tim Ferreira, Susan Hogarth, and Valerie Sarwark. Those development committee members have just absolutely showed up for this party. And it's so important that you as LNC members participate in the development process, because donors do not want to hear from me. I am just a staff member. They want to hear from the leadership that they elected, that has been elected to lead them. So when I get on the phone, I don't have the kinds of responses that you all need to be given. So please book some call time with me, spend some time with our donor base. It's so important. It's also so rewarding to have these conversations. You know, Whitney's heard a lot from our major donors, and every time she gets off the phone, she was like, well, that's the best call I've had all day. Those are opportunities to really connect, and those kind of connections lead to donor retention. And that is where my focus is going to be next year. For the last 2 years, I've been working on touching our donors that had been neglected for a really long time. And so I've now pushed through that, our team has now pushed through that, and we're going to be focused on outward prospecting next year. This is where my budget is going to be spent mostly, is how are we reaching people that we have never reached before. That is going to be my focus. I hope you will support and honor that and be a part of that. But again, my report is here for you to read. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take it for you.
I don't have any questions. I know I said I was thanking everybody, but I did want to point out that because of your team's efforts and everybody's efforts, that we had a beautiful problem with the budget this year, which is that we were limited by what our policy manual said, not by how much money is coming in. And that is a beautiful problem to have, and so thank you.
I do want to say right now we are in a transition period with Larissa stepping out and Becca moving over. I saw Michelle just tear up a little bit. It's really, really hard. We as a staff, we work so hard together. It's very emotional. We get very attached to one another. We rely on each other. Staff, we can't talk. Most of what goes on in our life, we can't talk about with anyone but each other. And so we become very, very close in this process. Becca is a resource, is an unbelievable resource to my team, and I'm going to be so emotional. I mean, she's just moving over to become my lateral peer for an interim, but that is a huge hole in my team that I'm going to have to fill. Becca is absolutely irreplaceable as a human being on our staff, and every single piece of email that you get from this party, Becca has touched. Every single direct mail piece that you get, Becca has touched. And she's such an important, I inherited her, she was here before me, but I'm so lucky to have gotten the opportunity to work with her, and I know that she's totally capable of taking on this interim role, but that is going to be a huge hole that I need to fill in the early part of the year.
All right, well, thank you, Tara.
I got a question.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. What, in terms of the direction of our fundraising, you've obviously done an admirable job, highly admirable job of reaching out again to orphan donors, lost donors. But in terms of what I'll call event donor fundraising, where a lot of our competition, and by the way, I'm on all their mailing lists, so I get all their emails and all their fundraising requests. But at the drop of a hat, the burning folks, based on even some of the most obscure legislation imaginable, are raising money off of. Are we going to move in that direction where we're going to react more directly to events, particularly legislative?
That's not my job. My job is to raise money as we do things to build and grow this party. My job is not legislative affairs. Maybe
No, to react to legislative affairs in terms of events, policies to generate interest and passion. Is there going to be any attempt this year to raise money as a reflection of what happens in legislation and the passion that arises or brings up in our voters and our supporters?
Can I step in on that, Tara? So I think the reason I asked to step in, Pat, is because I think that speaks to the nexus of comms and fundraising, where our communications effort is going to be the more active and responsive to the current events environment as it goes on. And I think that what we will be looking as both of those areas have challenges that we need to confront early in the year in terms of solidifying our personnel there. I know Tara is going to be in an interim capacity doing without one of the best writers on her team. Of course, that writer will be serving as our interim communications director, and so have more direct connection to our more rapid response to current and legislative events. I think a priority in the next year is going to be unifying those functions, not unifying them under one umbrella, but more closely coordinating those functions so that as we build out our communications capacity, it can feed content into our development machine.
Absolutely use.
And the development team's already doing this, but is doing this in the basket with all the other development things, right? And so I think what you're touching on is this idea of, if I understand your question, is there going to be a focus on increasing that effort? I think the answer is, as we stand up our comms team, you're going to see that focus happen.
But it's going to not come out of development. Development is there to highlight the successes that we have and show opportunities where we can grow with financial support. There are donors that love to give when we're successful, when we actually achieve things. And so we will continue to highlight our successes as they happen. But out of development, it's not our job to create success for the party in any other way except for financial. So we have an activism coordinator. We do stay in touch. Michelle and I meet weekly to talk about what the possibilities are to work together. We'll continue to do that. I do actually, something that I missed in my report that I really want us to talk about is I've been taking time to help our state affiliates grow. I have been working individually with Florida, with Oklahoma, with New Mexico, with California. I have been working with Connecticut most recently and Massachusetts. Some of you know I joined the state committee there. I am working very hard to make sure that our state affiliates feel supported by our national staff, and building those bridges has been exceptionally rewarding. They all have different challenges that they're facing, and I'm getting to understand what those challenges look like from their perspective, and that's a really great opportunity that I think you all should know about. And nobody had asked me to do that. I just think it's really important as we build the infrastructure of this party to help our affiliates stand on their own feet. And if I can help them understand the world of fundraising and how to build that infrastructure in themselves, I feel like I've left a mark on this party for a very long time, and that's exceptionally rewarding to me.
All right, I'm gonna keep the trains moving along. Thank you, Tara. All right, so that covered the last question, Pat, dovetailing a little bit with communications is an excellent segue. On the Polycom, I believe we have Larissa Gahn, who is of course our communications director. Larissa, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. It is a large room here, so you may want to speak as loudly as possible. Take it away.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm not going to highlight everything in my staff report because I have it all written out. One thing that I did want to comment on and just kind of follow what Tara said, the quarter 4 is a place where comms really also provided support for state affiliates. I had a bunch of state affiliates ask out for communications help, whether that was for helping with their internal communications, or crisis communications, things like that. So I've developed some kind of best practices and guidelines for helping those affiliates that will stay with the party when I leave, so that Becca, moving into that interim communications director role, that she can also provide support to affiliates when they need communication support. Moving on, the thing that I really want to highlight today is the anti-mandate ad, just because I could have submitted a 20-page report, just for that. But I really wanted to highlight some of the challenges that we had with that, some of our victories, and also, kind of outline what the future looks like for that ad. So if you look at the bottom of the page on the anti-mandate ad report, the total views as of November 22nd were 167,487. We are after, as of Friday, November 26th, we were at 222,050, and that does not include, I did not get the report yet for this week, so we are definitely up to 250,000 views on that ad. We were very strategic with how we placed the ad. Our ad buy for this ad is over $20,000, and that is, we are just 3 weeks into a 12-week ad campaign. So that is explaining where most of the money is going, but we only have data for the first 2 to 3 weeks on that. So we had some challenges getting that up due to the sensitive nature of the content of the ad, and also, there is sort of a stigma attached to our name. It's really difficult to get some people to play ball with us. They wanted to muffle us out. So that's something that I am more than happy to talk to the media committee about, because those sorts of issues that I had with these larger corporate ad structures should be addressed, in my opinion, before the midterm. Going over the OTT, the over-the-top media service, we targeted 10 states, and there is a lot of strategy there for the states that we targeted. That's something, again, that I would be willing to talk to any member about, outside of a public setting, the strategy that went into that. But, I am excited to see what this ad does over the next 10 weeks. And that'll be a report that Becca or Tyler that they give at the quarter 1 meeting. So I'm excited to see those results as well. I'm sure I will watch the live stream. So with that said, I just wanted to thank each and every one of you for a positive experience, for working for the committee. It was my pleasure. I really hope that what I was able to kind of accomplish and build up in comms over the last however many months will really prepare the party for not only the midterm elections, but for the future in the field of communications. So yeah, with that, I'll take any questions. And also, if you ask a question, if somebody near the Polycom could sort of restate the question for me, or if you could speak really, really loudly, that would be helpful.
I will go ahead, Larissa, and both recognize folks and restate their questions for you, for anyone who has questions for Larissa. Mr. Ford.
Sorry, it's cold. Where do we stand with our breakthrough, if you will, into national media presence, both in terms of earned media and also physical appearances by representatives of the party?
So the question, Larissa, from Mr. Ford was for a status update on where we stand in terms of national media, both in terms of earned media and physical appearances by representatives of the party.
Sure. So we're continuing to make progress on that. I've developed a lot of relationships over the past few months since I've been here. I did outline some of those Q4 national impressions. Our anti-mandate movement was picked up in Newsweek. We also have had multiple appearances on SiriusXM. We have a Fox News appearance coming up in December. So we have made a lot of headway there. We actually have people reaching out to us, and I've turned down some appearances because it seems like there have been some motivations there to kind of paint us in a bad light. So we're actually jockeyed in a really good position that we can kind of pick and choose our media spots. And that's something that I also will work with Becca on, and I'm going to do warm handoffs to her for the media contacts that I have for Nationwide Media.
Thank you, Larissa. Mr. Nikela.
So my question for Larissa is, what does she view as our biggest opportunities or areas we can improve in the future?
The question from Mr. Nikela, Larissa, is what you view as our biggest opportunities or areas we can improve on for the future.
Definitely with ad placement. There's a lot that I learned over the past 3 months with running this ad. There are a lot of obstacles that are there. You know, and I again, you know, Stephen, I would be happy to have a phone call with you and also your communications director in Florida offline to go over some of these challenges. Again, I'm kind of hesitant to do that in a public forum, but I would, you know, love to talk to you about those because there are some serious roadblocks there, and I was able to break through them just because I was, you know, a real pain for these people, but you know, there's a lot that has to be done in order to build a stronger foundation for ad appearances in the future.
Thank you, and I would like to take a moment, since it's the last opportunity that this body will have with Larissa in this capacity, to encourage everybody to thank Larissa with a round of applause for her service to Larissa's presence on staff has elevated us, not just through her hard work, but through the professionalism that she brings to every single thing she does every single day. And you will be very sorely missed, but we of course wish you the very, very best and know that the future holds bright things. So thank you, Larissa.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
All right. And with the unfortunate task of following that, Michelle, I'm going to recognize you for the activism report. Michelle McCutcheon.
Hi all, thank you, and yay, we're at the end of the year in the fun budget meetings, so you guys have a lot of fun decisions to make. Activism over this last quarter. I have finished out doing the regional trainings. As was shared earlier, I did all 8 of them. Really enjoyed getting to know our membership, and the feedback we got was really good, helped us improve the trainings, but also helped us really touch base with what people needed from us as national staff. Of course, I beg for any kind of SOP, job descriptions, principles that you want so we can keep building on that activism repository for our affiliates and candidates. Numbers are shooting up. We have 135 volunteers right now for the Wyoming Marijuana Project that Apollo's heading up. So I'm onboarding all of them and getting them tied into the training he's offering. We got our phone bank trainers, phone bank and text trainers all trained on Call Hub. The other project I'm working on right now is we're actually calling for New Mexico libertarians to get them campaign volunteers and candidates. And I've had a handful of people do that. So if you get people that say they're bored, send me and I will train them on phone banking, and then you'll have phone bank trained to people. One thing I have started kind of mirroring Tara's thing is reaching out to each of the state chairs. Many of you in here have already had an email from me where we are going to work on national volunteer support and engagement. This is key that people know that we are here to support you. And as Tara stated, each state has different challenges and is at a different point. I've already had calls with Stephen, been emailing back and forth with Jared Weimer, and we're actually having a meeting Monday. So people are starting to set up meetings, and I'm going to train. I'm going to do whatever they need to help make sure that their volunteers are engaged and tied in immediately, so that there's no delay in that turnaround. We grab these excited people and plug them in, and it is super rewarding. That's really my biggest project right now. I am hoping to launch, and TJ and I are in preliminary talks, to have it be California, a legislative advocacy software tool, which will be one click to Facebook, tweet, email, or call the rep, your rep, or the sponsor of the bill. And TJ has graciously agreed to make a plugin that will feed back into City, so we capture that data, so we know what issues are important, and we all know data is king. So I'm very, very excited about what that might look like. And we are about to launch. Andy is working on a calendar or request where you can request volunteers, and we'll have a separate password protected volunteer calendar. So all of our current volunteers can just see what they want to do, know who to contact, know how many people. If it's event-based, they can make sure to make it to that, all those kinds of things. And that's kind of the overview of everything I'm doing. Do you have questions?
This social part, this activism plugin you're talking about, is this offer, is that $11,000 a recurring cost or for one time?
It's annually, $11,500. Anyone else? I thank the board for your time.
All right. Thank you so much, Michelle. I've got a bit of bad news for you in that you're going to be putting up with me for a brief minute longer. Mr. Burns, who's not available today, I already covered some section of his CRM and affiliate support report, but one thing that I'd like to highlight, well, there are two things I'd like to highlight during his specific reporting time, and the rest of his report, which is both extensive and information rich, I will let stand as written, but I would highly encourage you to be directed to it. The two things I want to highlight that you will find there, though, one of them speaks both to Andy's professionalism as a member of staff and just the general trend on the staff side of adopting more professional institutions and practices. You'll find a SWOT analysis of the CRM program as a whole as we look forward to not only what the future holds, but where we are now and what we can learn from the past. And secondly is a summary of a affiliate support survey that went out. We have all the surveys back. At the time of compiling these staff reports, we have not fully and richly analyzed them, but this was Mr. Burns' initiative to put out a report to a survey to our CRM users, both at the state affiliate level and at the county affiliate level, so that we get user feedback on the product that can help guide, can help us understand where the training needs are, where the support needs are, where the not just the technical limitations, but the perceived limitations of the product are, the things that we need to address. And of course, we included some broader affiliate support items that touch on Michelle's area of activism, because it would have been silly of us to waste an opportunity to garner really valuable feedback from our state and local affiliates in terms of the services that they receive from national and broadly. So we will have a more complete findings of those available at some point in the future, but our initial sort of summary is information that is included in Andy's report, and I think it will be helpful in helping us gear that side of our team into a very successful 2022. Now, we are very blessed to have Mr. Molman as a key volunteer as part of that team. Ken, is there anything else that you think should be highlighted?
I think the main thing, looking at Andy's report, being an IT person, I just want to point out that he put a lot of work into that. He has charts and graphs and pretty pictures that make it very easy to understand what the heck's going on. So that's not common for IT people to take the time to build those charts and graphs and pretty pictures. So if you are interested in trying to get an understanding of what the heck's going on, this might be the report to read. Beyond that, and we talked about it, I don't know if you want to talk about it an hour later or whatever, the whole 2CRM thing is a nightmare for data management and data movement. We've got two masters, basically, and one is all the states had their data over here, and we have data feeding into it, and we have Razor's Edge, which is the membership database. And what I think officially the state party, or not state party, the national party uses for fundraising. But from an efficiency standpoint, from a keeping the data sane standpoint, and from having to move data back and forth, which we will again talk about this in a bit, probably in executive session, about hand keying data and making me want to cry. We need to look at ways to automate all the things that fits within our budget and ideally helps our affiliates as well. So I don't know if we want to talk about that now or later. I was actually asking the chair about that as well. Talk more about that now or later.
I think in the spirit of Ms. Adams' point about staff reporting, but I am certainly welcome that conversation. I'd be happy to participate in it whenever it takes place. I think what can be said in public session without any difficulty is that there are certainly efficiency losses that result from systems that don't handshake cleanly with each other.
That is a really good way to put that,
Yeah. All right. So then moving on to our next report, I'm gonna, before I call the next person up, I'm gonna pull back and let you see the man behind the curtain for a minute. I am thoughtful in the way that I structure this staff reporting. I always have it start off with financial details and fundraising, because that's what enables us to do all the things that you then hear about. I have it end with our political candidate support staff, because that is the end that we are here pursuing. And so as we move into that section, I would like to recognize Kara Schultz to come up and deliver her report. You will of course know Kara. I bragged about the regional trainings. Many of you on the live stream, if you are a current or former candidate, will of course recognize Kara as the phone call you make at midnight when you wonder what you've gotten yourself into, and she is the one who is there for you. Kara, take it away.
I do want to start out thanking the trainers, our regional reps, and our state chairs for helping make that regional training a success. I set it up purposefully that it would be the regions making the decisions. Where will it be held? When will it be held? Rather than trying to press this onto a region or a state or that kind of thing. Some of you took advantage of a state chair not being at the meeting to vote to have the training at their state, so that was, I applaud your sneakiness. But your involvement is what made it a success. And all of the people that attended and then spoke to friends about it after they attended. And so they grew. As time went on, they grew because more people wanted to be there. And I just want to point out that the really fantastic thing, yes, we have the survey results, which, and we asked people, what would you change? We really wanted that information. And we didn't give them the survey at the end. We gave it to them the very first thing in their hand so that they could make notes the entire weekend. Because I wanted that information. So we really pulled that information in. We made adjustments as we went through, and then I have my notes. But something that was absolutely unexpected was we had 5 attendees who went to one region, were certified, and then they paid to fly or drive to another region because they wanted to take the other certification too. And to me, I look at that and I'm like, if it sucked, they wouldn't have done that. So, you know, that was a surprising metric. When we look at the elections, I gave a little more in depth of a breakdown because we're collecting more data on our elections and getting that information into the CRM. Because that's going to be very important to analyze. Where do we put our money? Where do we see trends? All of that kind of thing, but we have to have that data. And we haven't always collected as in depth of data. We've tried, but we haven't always done that. We do need to continue going forward with that. That brings me to an ask, and it is a monetary ask, which is in my report, and it's towards the end. And we are talking about making our positions more sustainable and scalable, right? Not so much fishing or teaching men to fish, that kind of thing. But in order for me to shift my time onto higher and better purpose, I'm going to need some assistance with handling the data, getting that data entered, that type of thing. Just getting the candidates, making sure we have a phone number, we can contact them. When they're elected, getting that information and getting that entered in, because it's not just did they win or lose. We want to know their opponents' names. We want to know how many votes they got, how many votes their opponent got, what was the percentage, what parties are they all affiliated with. So is it partisan, nonpartisan? How many candidates were in the race? Is it a top 2 or a top 5? So we're going to a depth of knowledge, and we got to have that knowledge. But entering it in is, it's a time-crunching nightmare. So right after the election, when we most need that information quickly, we are hampered by me physically entering that information in. And that's why I'm putting that monetary ask in there to have some assistance with that, because within 48 hours we needed to do the candidate aftercare. And thank you to those of you who helped make those calls. They make a huge difference to our candidates to just hear the words, thank you. I write everyone a handwritten thank you note. We get the list compiled to get the elected pins out to our electeds. And yes, they do wear them, and they wear them to their city council meetings and all that kind of stuff. So it makes a difference. But I had 48 hours to do that, and even with help, I had over 70 man-hours of work to complete within 48 hours just for me. So that's my ask in there, so that I can start to shift my time onto doing things like analyzing and higher and better purpose, and working more with our political directors, so that there's 51 of me, not one of me. That's my goal. I want 51 of me out there. So that's what we're looking at doing. And with that, I mean, my report was pretty damn long, so, you know, sorry folks. But if any of you have any questions? Yes, sir.
I had the opportunity to attend the Atlantic City training, and it was phenomenal. Particularly the sessions which revolved around crisis messaging and messaging in general, because of the very highly practical nature of the training. You had role-playing conversations, and in fact, the biggest challenge of the weekend seemed to be sessions running over because simply people did not want to leave, and people did not want to end the conversation. So there's a organic thirst for that type of content across the party. Maybe you can speak to that, because there was a glow when people were leaving. They were psyched.
Those, if you were able to go to one of those trainings, the attendees were amazing. I mean, they were just amazing. We had great trainers, and we had great attendees. They were very active and engaged and interested. They had a lot of questions. The number one complaint that we received on the survey was they wanted more. And it wasn't that they thought the classes were lacking. They wanted more classes, longer classes, you know, and I'm like, I'm already punishing you with like a weekend, you know? And they wanted more of that. So I'm working with the convention committee to bring more to our convention, to have that type of training. And we want to normalize this type of training, both for our candidates and for our state affiliate leadership and county affiliate leadership, so that this is just a normal thing to do this continuing education. And so that will happen in the regions, in your odd years, and then at national convention on our even years. We'll have online training, we have past trainings posted, we have, everyone has access to the training decks that were used, past training videos. So I'm trying to make it as accessible as possible, and have different learning environments as well. Some will be in person, some are online. Different learners need different methods. So that's what we're trying to hit. But at the training, it was such a positive experience. You know, and I heard, oh, you know, this is fantastic. You know, there's not all the BS going on, and everyone's welcome. And people were sitting, you know, like it was lions and lambs. We're sitting together, and you know, it was really incredible. It was wonderful. So thank you to everyone who participated in that, because it was your participation which made it amazing. Yes, sir.
Quick question, and I think I know the answer a little bit already, but you received a lot of feedback that people wanted more and all of that. Responding to that feedback, is there an idea of creating like breaking it out as a 101, a 201, or a 301 level course? And is there also plans to make train the trainer courses, so states could actually have their own training teams on call on a much more regular basis?
Hell yes. All of that. Yeah, so our 201 and higher level classes, our idea is to have those at the national convention, and that's where they more naturally sit. And then keep bringing your beginner classes out to the regions, because we're growing. We're going to keep growing. We're going to have new people that need those 101 classes coming in, and then have those higher level classes at the national convention. And yes, do we want to train the trainers? Absolutely, because Michelle and my other trainers that did a few of these regional trainings can attest. That was grueling and brutal. I abused the hell out of my trainers. I would like to say I'm sorry, but I'm not. So there you go. Yes, yes, ma'am.
Well, first of all, thank you very much for the work you've been doing on the training. That's amazing, and I've heard some more great things about it. A question about the kind of database entry work that you're thinking about. Have you reached out to any of local colleges? A lot of college students look for some short-term internships, and that's the kind of thing that in my legislative office we use college interns to do database and with my campaigns, and actually with the current job that I've got. But you know, you say, okay, go out and find this information and put it into a database. I mean, that would be another option as well.
Yeah, we're exploring a couple different options with that. The hang up is always to enter that into our CRM is you're at a higher level of user. You're pretty close to admin user, because you're doing it across the country. You're not like, you know how you have states can see states? Okay, this sees everything, interacts with everything. We can tweak the permissions and do that type of thing. But the other thing is it reliable information, and is it entered absolutely correct?
always a problem.
It is,
So no
I
matter who's
know,
doing it.
I know it. So we are looking at a couple different options. We have had people, volunteer and help, and we've done that in the past. And that's where we're at with some crap data that I'll need to go back years and amend. And that makes me cry every time I think of doing that. But yes, there are some options. We're gonna look and explore those options. And I have a happy update from Pennsylvania. 149.
Whoa!
Every single one of those is partisan. And for anyone who says, well, it's partisan, but you know, some of these are right, you know, or they're you know, it's a real low level office, people could have chosen not to fill in the oval next to Libertarian, but they did so. That's important. That's very important.
We also have some mayors and some town council races.
Yes.
And other things, not just local
Exactly.
offices. And
Exactly. They had a range. They had a range. And what Pennsylvania did was holistic. It wasn't just electeds. It wasn't just membership, and it wasn't just fundraising. Their effort was a holistic effort, and if you were at the trainings, you probably saw them present how they did it and how you can have a holistic approach to raising those three areas in your state affiliate too. And so I do thank Pennsylvania for sharing that knowledge. They could have just said, no, we're awesome, you all suck. They didn't. They wanted to help, right? Yes, sir.
And I had heard, and just to go on Pennsylvania a little bit, that some of the people who were behind home maneuver and really recruiting candidates from the get-go have said that they would be interested in talking to other political directors in other states and expanding. So I would encourage, 150 libertarians elected. I mean, wow, right? Just wow. I mean, we need to replicate that everywhere. Not every state is that model going to work for. In states like Illinois, there's a lot of partisan races. That's where I'm obviously really focused. I would encourage you to take this back to your states. If you're regional, take it back to your regional. The work that Karen's doing, huge, absolutely huge, but we have another resource, other volunteers who have demonstrated their success as well. So just throw that out there.
Yeah, and it was holistic. What Pennsylvania did, this was not an overnight thing. They had a strategy, they had a written strategy, which they executed over multiple years.
I just like to emphasize, I mean, when we used to do outreach, when I was more involved in direct outreach before pandemics and stuff, one of the questions we would commonly get is, well, who do you have elected? And the better you can answer that question, the more legitimacy you have in the eyes of the person asking that question. And so it is extremely important, beyond the fact that it is our mission to do this, that success breeds success. And so I'd like to see that continue. And I applaud them. That's excellent work. We used to have none in Kentucky, and I found that once we had some, and we were able to, you know, I mean, I used to have people literally, I'd say, well, we don't have any yet. They just turn and walk away.
Yep.
Like, not even say goodbye, not even have a nice day, just leave. And once we had people actually elected, they were like, oh, okay. And they get you to the next hard question, right? But at least you're to the next hard question. And so that I'd like to encourage people to do that. And you know, even the so-called little offices, it turns out oftentimes you can do a lot.
Oh, yes, we can.
And so, you know, the local, especially your city councils or your county governments, if you look at who's usually raising your taxes, it's usually them.
Yes. Government does like to government you.
Yes.
No matter what the level. Yes, sir.
So, is there a way for states that aren't on the CRM to grant you guys this information about candidates and stuff? Like,
yes.
And if so, how do you do that?
Sure.
Currently.
Absolutely. So even if you're not on the CRM, any state can enter their candidates' information, and we have a URL that I give you, and as we hit right past January, I will send that out again. I try to send it out a couple times a year to all the state chairs. Takes you to a URL, you enter your password, and it's a web form. So you can easily just enter your candidate's information. And you can enter it, even if you don't want it yet to appear on the website, you mark them as a prospect rather than as declared. So you still have control over that. So don't feel that you have to wait until after, you know, your nominating convention and all that type of thing to get the information in there. You don't. Get the information in there on your prospects as you have them, and then when they're solid, you've nominated them or they're going to be on the ballot or whatever, it's literally just a click, and then they're live, right, and visible. You can alter the information, everything. So whether you're in the CRM or not in the CRM, that is available to every state, and bless every one of you that does that. I'm getting choked up just thinking about entering all your candidates. That's wonderful if you would do that.
All right. Thank you so much, Kara. All right. And for our last little bit of staff reporting time, I'm going to call up Mr. Apollo Pizzell. I will do the awkward thing for him in stating that the majority of his report, particularly as it is forward-looking, is highly confidential and strategic information pertaining to campaigns in the field. Mr. Pizzell has made himself available, should the committee desire, to speak about it during executive session. But when it gets to question and answer time, so that he hopefully doesn't have to awkwardly tell you that he can't answer, I'm telling you that now, if it pertains to future plans and future strategic initiatives as they may take place. Nonetheless, there's plenty that has been done that I'm sure we would love to talk about and share with the committee. Mr. Pizzell.
I'll be very brief, thank you. So we were, a lot of what we've been working on is working with states on redistricting. A lot of people don't really think of redistricting as an important piece of the campaign puzzle, but realistically, upwards of 49% of all districts in this country, of all 5,000 races, are pre-decided just based off of redistricting every 10 years alone. Something that Supervisor Hewitt's dealing with right now in his district as well. So a significant amount of time was working directly with states on making sure that we had favorable maps going forward for the next 10 years so that we did have districts that were competitive for us. Obviously, Wyoming became the most contentious as the Wyoming State Legislature worked very, very hard to try to alter two of the districts that we do very well in, one of them being Representative Marshall Bird's district. And we went back and forth on about 7, 8 different maps. We had Whitney and Tyler both emailing the Speaker of the House of the state of Wyoming. We had a lot of meetings, and we got a favorable map. The first map we were presented put Representative Burt in, it combined him into a district with a pro-marijuana Republican. It's very, very sneaky. They did very well on that first map. Fortunately, we were able to work favorably with the Appropriations Committee to be able to get a new map drawn. I'm happy to. My laptop had a little bit of an accident last night, so it's being dried out at the moment. Otherwise, I would have maps for you. But I'm willing to walk around if you would like to see the district. It's something to absolutely see. As Tyler said, I liked what you said. I think it was the most apt. That's the district of an influential representative. They cut the district in a way that the only way that there's continuity in order to keep him in his district is by a freeway. So it was very favorable to us. In other states we did better. There was less controversy because they didn't know what we were really after because there wasn't an incumbent in the office, so they weren't trying to get rid of them. So it was slightly easier. It was a little less controversial. Aside from that, we also have the initiative that we're testing. We wanted to test to see how initiatives we were doing. We're doing very well. We're at 25% after only 2 months of activity, 25% of the total. So it will, I feel confident saying that we will get that on the ballot, which is fairly exciting work, and was able to we were able to collect data In the closed session, as Tyler had said, we'll go ahead and talk about what the candidate focus will be going forward. It's very exciting. I'm sorry if you can't, I'm very tired. Spilling on the laptop, had to do that late last night. So my enthusiasm level might be low, but trust me, it's very high. There's actually some very good opportunities out there that I'm excited to talk to you guys about in the closed session. I'm happy to answer any questions that are appropriate for now.
All right, excellent.
Thank you, Apollo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I'll offer the committee one more opportunity for any questions you may have from your other members of staff. Richard, how much longer do we have on our 90-minute time?
There is approximately 7.5 minutes.
All right, otherwise I'm happy to give you 7.5 minutes back. So it'll be your choice as a committee. I'm not seeing any hands. Let's bank the 7 minutes. Can I ask one more round of applause for staff?
I'm not sure how to do that. Okay, we'll see. There's a lot of people behaving like animals in YouTube, apparently. So I don't know if anybody has any suggestions on how to kill that. That would be fantastic. Mr. Longstreth, you had
Yes.
your hand up.
Real quickly, I think you can turn off comments on an individual channel.
Can you? Are you able to do that?
I would move that we take a 10-minute recess, and when we come back from recess, we enter executive session to discuss political strategy with Mr. Gazelle and Mr. Harris, as well as everybody else.
Help.
Okay, so we have a motion to take a 10-minute recess, and then when we return to go immediately into executive session to discuss the matters that we're not able to discuss publicly from Mr. Pizel's report. Second. Has been seconded. Any objection to doing that thing?
Not objection. How long?
10-minute recess?
Okay.
Hearing no objection, we are recessed for 10 minutes. So we'll come back at 11:08 and immediately go into executive session for the purpose of discussing Mr. Pizel's.
Madam Chair, is there any way, people are watching, are complaining about the sound quality, is there any way to get any amplification?
LNC members and alternates, Mr. Harris, Mr. Pizzell, and with the body's indulgence, Ms. DeSisto.
If I can just state for those who are on the stream who may have missed the first part of that, the committee is going into executive session.
Correct.
Is that
We're
correct?
going into executive session for the purpose of discussing political strategy that warrants confidentiality.
And the stream will resume once the committee gavels back into open
That
session.
is correct.